Yes, well, once again, good afternoon, uh, my student viewers at home. My name is Olatunde Michael. This is one of our educational series of Omega Bio Edutainment. Today, we are going to talk on a brief revision of all the past videos you have at my YouTube, that you have in my YouTube, that is at Omega Bio Edutainment. And our focus today is going to be revision on advanced advanced toxicology, as well as introduction to toxicology. So, and just like you have it on the screen, we are going to look at, in the left hand side of the screen. We are going to look at what introduction toxicology could be, because before you will come this far in talking about advanced toxicology, you must have actually talked about um, introduction to toxicology. So that is very important. So we'll look at toxicology. We are going to look at toxicology, what toxicology is all about, what toxicology is all about. Then, after that, we will examine what should be the goal, what are the goals of toxicology, and just like what we have here. Because of our time, let me just run through what toxicology is. Toxicology is just the study of the effects of toxic substances on living organisms. So it is very right to say that the study of poison and the effects of such poison on human is is what we call toxicology, and that is why everything around us is a toxicology, is toxin or is toxic. So just like that human being, we are, let me say, living organism generally, we are continually being exposed to a lot of hazard, a lot of chemicals, a lot of pollutants, and the study of how it is going to affect us, as well as what are the basic mechanism that if we now have them around, what are the basic mechanism of their action. So it is a part of what we should study in this course as well. Then once again, what are the main goals, the primary goals of toxicology? So the main goal, or the major goal, is just to predict what could be the effects of toxin or toxic substances on human. What is the effects of toxic substances on human or living organism? And don't forget that the sources of toxic chemicals, they could be from living organisms or even non-living organisms. So we have actually seen that as well. Now, the next thing is, what could be the overall difference, or the difference between the study of toxin and what is also called pharmacology. So just like pharmacology is just the study of the beneficial effects of drugs. So sometimes the source of toxin can also be a kind of a pharmaceutical toxin. It could come from drugs as well. So that is the more reason that before you take anything in, you should be able to know which one is how safe is that chemical. So it is very possible that you should be able to differentiate between toxicology and what pharmacology could actually be. So then apart from that, there's something we do call LD50, that is leader dose. So that is the term they use to consider the dose of any substance, or the dose or dosage of any substance that is of causing death. So that is what is called LD50. So then another thing is, what do we mean by toxic dose? So toxic dose is a substance that cause an adverse effect in a 50% for population. So for example, now if in a population you have, let's say in albino rats, you now have 30 albino rats, and by the time you just administer a substance, and at the end of the day, if that substance is now so toxic that it has actually eliminated or caused any harmful effect on 50% of that population, like 30, that means, and that is exactly what you call TD. So that is the therapeutic, the toxic dose, not therapeutic. Then another thing is, what do we actually mean by toxicity? So the ability of any substance, toxicity is the ability of any substance to be able to cause harm, is what is called toxicity. So you need to know that. And at a point in time, you come to NOAEL, that is the short form of a no observed adverse effect level. So that is the highest dose at which there is no statistically significant increase. No, that is the highest dose at which there is no statistically significant increase in the adverse effect compared to that of the control. For toxicity in a set of albino rats, and let's say you have 6 rats in each cage, and you have like 6 cages, 6 different groups. The 6th group is the control group, in which you are not going to administer any substance, rather than just rather than let me say ordinary water that you know is not so toxic. So when you now get to that level, and when you calculate the adverse effects in all the other 5 cages, and you now compare it with that of the control group. So if there is nothing, no statistical difference between the group you administer drug to and that one that is that of the control, that is what is called NOAEL, no observed adverse effects level. Okay. Then the next thing is those um, response relationship. What do we mean by dose response relationship? I told you. So the dose response, when you talk of dose actually refer to the quantity of any chemical substance that an organism is being exposed to. That's the dose. So whether a compound is going to be regarded as a toxic will actually depend on this dose. And the response is the biological effect, or whatever the severity of that effect that is actually being induced by that chemical that you administer to. So studying that effect is exactly what is called dose response relationship. So the next thing is to look at, what do we mean by bioaccumulation? What is bioaccumulation? Bioaccumulation is just a build up. Is a build up. That is what bioaccumulation is, a build up of toxic substances in a given organism over a period of time. So how it has actually built up, that is actually referred to as bioaccumulation. Okay. So then, what do we mean if you say chronic toxicity, chronic effect, and acute effect? When you say chronic is actually talking about the effects that appear time over a long time after exposed to that substance, and that is exactly what is called a chronic effect. Whereas the acute effect is the opposite of chronic effects. So if if the effect is immediate, not long term, that is exactly what is called an acute toxicity. Then the route of exposure. The route of exposure is also one other factor that determines whether a compound is going to be toxic or not. For example, a substance that you consider safe, that is non-toxic, and you do not let it follow the normal route, that can become a toxin. It can become a toxic substance. Everybody knows that food is good, very, very good. But instead of you to ingest the food through your mouth, if you are eating it by passing it through your nose, you know that it's not going to be too palatable for you. So, and the most part that is very, very exposed to toxin, the most part that is so vulnerable, that whenever there's going to be any toxic um, concentration, it is the first part that is the most, or the first to get exposed to it. Very, very vulnerable, and that is the skin. So that's why I said route of exposure to chemicals actually involve what? Dermal exposure. Then apart from that, we want to also talk about chemical. What are the factors that determine the absorption of any chemicals? What are the factors? What are the factors that that chemical must obey before it can be readily absorbed by the body? Molecular weight is very, very important. If the molecular weight, if that substance is not if it is weight, that will make it to be what? To be very, very toxic. So that is one of the factors that you also have to consider. So then another thing is we need to consider what is actually called transformation. So transformation is a process that will make a protein to be less toxic, and that is the function of some of the vital organs in human. So it is the duty of organ to make any toxic substance, to detoxify it. Let me use that word, to detoxify it, and that is exactly what you call what? That is what you call detoxifier or a transformation, which is very, very important. And liver play a very vital role. That's because in detoxification, one of the major function, the primary function of liver is detoxification. Once your liver is being affected, that is not going to be allowed to carry out the function of detoxification. You know what it means. That even when you take in ordinary water, nothing to remove any harmful substance from it. So you know it's going to have harmful. No matter what, the advice is that we should not actually overwork our primary organs like the liver. For example, those that still take alcohol, that take it alcohol that to the level that, because it will get to a point that the liver will continue to detoxify until it is already being overwhelmed by these chemicals. And that is the main reason. That is the main, liver is a major target for so many substances, toxic substances. So if there is any pollutant, liver is also part of the target that the substance will target, so that they will not perform the role of detoxification again. So, and that's why we need to be very, very careful about what we actually take in. And just like I said, liver is the major, one of the primary organ that is a primary target for toxic or for poison. So, and that is why it performs the role of metabolizing toxin, removing them into less active or less harmful substance. So that is very, very important. Again, the next thing is teratogenic. What do we mean by teratogenic? From the word, okay, we'll talk about, okay, before I go, endocrine disruptor, one of the very chronic, or let me say, one of the example of a chronic substance that actually targets the endocrine level, the endocrine hormone. You know, endocrine is an hormone. The endocrine disruptor is a bisphenol A. That is an example. You need to know, or what they call BPA. So is an example of that. That is also regarded as a endocrine disruptor. Okay. So again, another thing that is also very, very important that we actually need to also know is, what do we mean by what are teratogens? What are carcinogens? What are mutagens? So mutagens are just substances that damage DNA and also cause mutation. That's why they call them mutagens. The same thing with carcinogens. Carcinogens are substances that causes cancer, substances that cause cancer, that they have the potential or ability to cause cancer. And don't forget that the first level of cancer is a mutation. So if there is no mutation, that means there cannot be what is called a cancer. So that's why you also need to know what a carcinogen are. I mean, what a carcinogen is and what a mutagen is. So don't forget that I said a mutagen is a substance that causes damages to DNA as well as inflicting mutation. So whereas a carcinogen is a substance that cause cancer, they only cause cancer. And what do we now mean by if we call a substance a teratogen? A teratogen is a substance that has the ability to cause congenital effects, congenital defects. Congenital means that it has the ability to inflict its impact on the younger ones or the offspring at birth. So that is what is called teratogen. We need to also know that. Then another thing is that in the process of the first step in toxicological evaluation of any chemical, that is, if you want to evaluate whether a chemical is going to be poisonous or is going to be harmful. So the first step that you need to take is what is called what? Exposure assessment. You carry out a research that is going to be called, or you carry out an assessment that is going to be to assess the risk exposure level. That is what they call it. I mean, why they call it risk exposure. So you assess the risk assessment studies. So it is very, very important that you should know. So having know all this, don't forget that this is just a kind of revision and something that you actually need to actually take into. So you have to be very, very, you have to go back to all those other videos and so that you'll be able to know part of what all this is. So having known what is in stake and what is in stock for us at introductory level, so the next stage for us is to know how can we actually manage, how can we manage and what can we say if you are talking about advanced toxicology. So that is the it's no longer the primary, is no longer the introductory stage, but this time around it is talking about the advanced stage. So that is the reason why what we will do next is going to be on advanced level. Going to be on advanced level. So that is the first thing we will learn in this advanced toxicology. The first thing we will learn in this advanced toxicology is going to be um, repro, repro toxicity. What do we mean by repro toxicity? So we are going to see that. Okay. Yeah. Reprotoxicity actually refer to any effects, toxic effect that is going to have on a reproductive system or reproductive health of an individual. So especially those one that will involve um, those one that will actually involve endocrine system or any of the reproductive organelle. So that is what is called reprotoxicity. So the next thing that we also need to know, which I have also told you about, is what is actually called the mechanism of toxicity. Why are we so interested in measuring? So, and what do we actually mean if you are talking of a mechanism of toxicity? So, I said the study of mechanism of toxicity is very, very central. It's very, very key. It is very, very important to see and understand how all these toxicants, how do they actually interact, or what will be their effects, their biological effects on a human system or on an in organism. So that is very, very possible, and that's the more reason that we have been able to look at what were the effects at cellular and molecular mechanism level, and that those one that, especially those one that effect on the signals transduction, those ones that have effect on disrupting the integrity of cell membrane. So these are very, very important. Then again, we also need to know some of the organs that are major targets for some of these heavy metals. For example, if you are talking of heavy metal, our mind will be going to like lead, chemicals like mercury, all these ones. What are their effects? You should know that anything that has to do with lead must involve the brain. Part of the brain must be the primary target of lead, and that of mercury too. So that's some of them also inflict what is called a blue baby syndrome. So that is what you call as the effect. That is what you recall as the effect of then night on of effect of nitrite on organisms. Okay, so then one other thing that is very very important that we need to know is what do we mean by reactive oxygen stress, ROS? What do we mean by that? So I think I explained that to you us the other in some of our earlier videos. Reactive oxygen stress or reactive oxygen species and free radicals. So there are some substances that their effect will involve the release of hydroxyl ions, hydroxyl radicals, and super peroxide get accumulated in the blood or in the system. You know what is going to be their effect. At the end of the day, it's going to have a very serious effect on them. For example, it will lead to what is called lipid peroxidation. Some of them will eventually damage the DNA. And just like I said, whatever affects the DNA will definitely lead to mutation, definitely lead to cancer, and might have a teratogenic effect as well. So that is why uh, react, reactive oxygen species are highly reactive molecules which contains oxygen, and they also have their effect in damaging cellular components. So that is what is called that. And you should not forget example. What are the examples? Example of carcinogens. There are many, like nicotine. Nicotine, um, chlorophenol, and so on and so forth. Some pesticides as well. So all these are part of what can actually inflict cancer or cause cancer. And don't forget the role of a cytochrome P450. That is the center that activates toxin. So that is the center that activates toxin to their more harmful forms. So whenever P450 cytochrome is allowed to perform its function, so sometimes even if you take, if the liver has been able to convert that substance into a less active form, so cytochrome P450 is an enzyme that is an enzyme system that can also make them or convert them back into their active substance. Okay, so that is very very important. And whenever you talk about neurotoxin, from the word neuro, something that has neurological effect, something that has effect on brain, that is a neurotoxin. Okay, so the next thing I will also make mention is at the point I mentioned TD for us. That is what is called threshold dose. Threshold dose. And what do we mean by threshold dose? This is the dose that is below the threshold level. That is the threshold dose is just the dose that cannot cause any adverse effects. No, this that is the dose at which adverse effect is observed. So that is a threshold dose. And the types of dose response curves I told you us, and the basic example we talk about linear dose response, whereby you have the response will increase proportionally. If the response will increase proportionally with the dose. What do we mean by proportional increase? That means if the response is directly, as the dose increases, then the response also increases. So that one is no two ways. Linear effect, straight line effect. It's going to be a straight line effect on them. So that is another thing that we also need to know as well. The dose response curve there are five. We have a linear dose response, we have non-linear dose response, we have sigmoid, and we have homeostasis. Homeostasis. So the non-linear one, this is a curve that will indicate that indicates a threshold below the threshold. So whenever the I said linear dose response, when you have the response being increases, so you have also the dose also increasing as well. Dose with response, they are increasing. And once the dose is coming down, also the response is also coming down. So, but non-linear, that is if it is inverse, one is increasing, the other one is decreasing. The other one is decreasing, this other one is increasing. So, and what happens? That is when we now have any dose response that is below the threshold dose, below the TD. You need to actually know that. Then the next one is a sigmoid, or what you can call S-shaped. Is a non-linear response. Non-linear is a non-linear response where a gradual increase in response, that is, once the response is increasing, then the dose also will be decreasing, so that at the end of the day, what you are going to form is going to be shaped. So that is very, very important. And another thing that another type of dose response curve that you can also come across is the one that is made up of a J-shaped. So, and that is called homeostasis. So low doses of a substance may have adverse, may have beneficial or stimulatory effects. So that is when, for example, when sometimes there are some chemicals that we stimulate immune production of, or we assist in immune production of that organism. So that case is an example that you can have a J-shaped curve. So that is very, very important. So let's go back to the mechanism of toxicity. So, and we look at enzyme inhibition and activation. That's a that's a substance that will lead to prevention of some enzymes within the system of the host, or it's either it leads to prevention, inhibiting it, or it's going to activate it. And once certain enzymes are super activated, you know what that means. So that one is going to lead to overproduction, overgrowth. It's going to lead to what is called hypertrophy. Hypertrophy. Or when you have a removal of certain organ, that is called atrophy. So a situation whereby a substance, the effect of a substance will lead to overproduction or underproduction of certain enzymes. So that is that level that. Then sometimes you see some substances, active substances, they have that ability to cause what is called apoptosis and necrosis. I told you that apoptosis is what is called a programmed death. So that is, every that substance is going to put a self-destructive signal on certain cells, so that at a point in time, that certain cell will die prematurely. And sometimes necrosis is just a situation whereby you see, which is natural, whereby cell will die as a result of old age, as a result of aging. So it is very possible that you have some toxin, you have some toxic substances, you have some chemicals that can actually activate or inflict either apoptosis, called the programmed death, or what you can call literally as a suicide, the ability or the process whereby the cell will undergo program death. Okay, and necrosis is such that as a result of being aging, getting old, so you just discover that some cell they will just die. The cell that supposed to still be to still be producing, but as a result of becoming aging, you see, there are some people, the more you take some chemicals like alcohol, certain drugs, the more old you become. Some of your cell will become very very old. They will undergo necrosis prematurely, and some of them they are also bound to commit suicide sometimes because of the chemicals they are being exposed to. So that is the more reason that normally studying toxicology is very very important. Studying toxicology, honestly speaking, at the end of this course, I want orientation as an environmental biologist. I want your orientation to be that some people have the orientation that anything they call poison must be labeled, must no, anything, anything at all, depending on the dose, including our food, can be water can be regarded as a poison. So don't think just when you are talking of a poison, you just go to the pharmacist, tell the pharmacist that you want to buy this poison. No, that is not. That is not. You see, some celebrity, we saw them died sometimes ago that he over abused. He abused painkiller, pain reliever, something that's supposed. So if you have certain drug that you are actually using for curative effect, and if you abuse that, that is also poison. So somebody that also abuse chemicals, you abuse alcohol, so that person is also supposed to be to get arrested the same way somebody that go on and do what, and buy poison or something that is actually labeled poisonous. So please, we should know. And don't forget that in some of my earlier video I do tell us that every day, every time, every minute, the substance that we are being continually, whether we like it or not, consciously or unconsciously, we are being exposed to dangerous chemicals. Dangerous chemicals. So pollutants, we cannot do without them, and that's why the effects is very very serious. So nowadays you now see that you have a lot of congenital diseases. You have a lot of diseases that even you will not even be able to even define. So, and we have given you an example of a blue baby syndrome. That is where you have over accumulation or accumulation of nitrites. So that is very very important. Then again, the part of the dose response mechanism is also those one. There are some substances, they have their toxic effect on DNA and protein synthesis. And just like I said, anything that to affect your DNA, you know what it means. So that is why we actually need to also know that it is not there are some substances that they will they will exert their effect, toxic effect on the synthesis. It is very very important. Then we also made mention of hydrogen sulfide, the effect of hydrogen sulfide. That is very very important. It is an example of toxic substances that is going to have their effect on respiratory system. Overexposure to hydrogen peroxide, hydrogen sulfide would have effect, the overall effect on the respiratory organ or respiratory failure. And again, Another thing that I actually mentioned that we did not talk about is that of the kinesis, toxicokinesis. So it's still what is called the mechanism, trying to look at the mechanism of action of toxic chemicals is called toxicokinesis. You want to know the rates at which they carry out their toxicological effects. So that is studying toxicokinesis. So you need to know that. Don't forget that I told you that threshold dose is a dose that is non-toxic. It's a dose that is below, that can no longer cause any observable effect, and certain drugs as well. So don't think if you are saying some poison are harmful, some poison are harmful, don't cast your mind to maybe what you have in some petrochemical industries. You just tell them that since where am I getting that from? Since I'm not actually working in this kind of industries. So, in fact, the amount of toxin that some of us live in the place of our work, occupational toxicology, is greater. Sometimes it's always very, very greater to people that are actually working in some of these chemical industries, heavy chemical industries, and so on and so forth. So don't forget that today is just a kind of the revision, so that we'll be able to go back, read and listen to all those videos, and as a kind of a feedback, want to test whether you have been following us or you have not been following us, whether you're a good student or you are not. One of the primary aim of studying toxicology is going to help us to be able to understand and predict what could be the effect. You don't have to wait until it has started exerting. You have to predict the effect, what is going to be. So I remember some of my project students last year. I think what this is in line with what they did. They discovered that all these energy drinks, people overconsume it. People have seriously abused it. Anytime they want to do any task at all, or in fact, some people have even turned it to be their own water that quenches their thirst. That quenches their thirst. So, what did they do? They now tested the effects. What could be the effects of all those, using different concentration of all those energy drinks. So I think they had like 5 different energy drinks that they purchased over the counter, and they tested it. They did a kind of toxicological studies on rats. So after that, they harvested their major organs. They look at their histological. They did a lot of things, including hematological parameters. They also use that. So what are we trying to say? We are saying that it's not until you go to any shop that you demand for chemicals, poisonous chemicals, before you know that you have chemicals, not knowing that you have chemicals around you. You have chemicals around you. So what we are saying in essence is just that we need to know, we need to predict, we need to know what could be their effects. So as a result of that kind of study that these students, my research students, carried out, we could actually educate and even try and make recommendations based on this. So whether to consume this or not to consume that. So, but you should just know that whatever that is going to be functioning for you, whatever that is going to be beneficial, will also have its own side effects. Food is beneficial, but it also has its own side effect. That is why even if you are taking in food, there are certain organs that we go and process. We go and process that, and we'll be able to carry out another process that is called excretion. The process of taking in food is as good as the process of excreting that food, because if you can only take in and you cannot excrete, there's going to be bioaccumulation. It's going to lead to a lot of health hazard, and before you know it, even you won't be able to even take in anything again. That is the reason why that studying toxicology should just be that should be everybody's business that everybody is going to be aware of. The route of exposure is very important. The dose of exposure is very, very important. The concentration is very, very important. And don't forget, we also mentioned some of the regulatory bodies. There are certain dosage at which each of these substances is being regulated to. So, including drugs and food. That's why in Nigeria we have NAFDAC, we have Standard Organization of Nigeria. In other countries too, we have a lot of them at international level. So, as good as the food is, it is also very, very toxic at a time if not taken through the right routes, if not taken through the normal dosage. When you overheat, when you overfeed, you will just discover that in fact, every day the body cannot pass whatever food or nutritional level that it is going to need for survival. Every excess one is going to get excreted out of the body. So don't forget that this is just the kind of revision notes. So go through the other lectures on this educational series, go through them, review them, and later on practice the quiz through the link that will be sent there.